It's extraordinarily painful to feel that you abandon yourself and that something or someone could make you lose all balance, lose who you are, even lose your sense of self. But but it happens. Love is an agreement, and it's an agreement of trust. And the biggest thing also is love yourself, learn to build that love in yourself, and guess what? Then you'll rebuild that trust because you'll feel your way to it. And by the way, one last thing, and this could be a second video if you want. I had Sister Tibwa, who's a tantra master in Africa. We were talking, and she said, "You can't say vibration because I say vibration never lies, right?" She's like, "You can't say it never lies. What about when you talk to a narcissist or a charming person? It feels so good." And I said, "Listen, when somebody is even an alcoholic or abuser or whatever, they will give good energy. That's not fake energy. It's good at that moment. Your job as a healthy person is when it turns dark."
Exactly.
That's when you go. You don't have to be psychic and go, "I can tell somewhere you're in abuse." You don't need to do that. Show up, be kind to her or him. And then if that turns dark, then you don't play anymore. You're like, no. And you do it with your daughter or son, or in my case, my dog. Anything you love and you want to protect, you're not going to put it in a place that it's going to get hurt. I mean, if I have my dog play with some dog and he got bloody or hurt, I'm not having him play with that dog anymore. And that's it. Most of you, like most of us, that's like the issue. Be with yourself, at every moment. You're not supposed to have, there's no way you can be expected to, you're not necessarily the codependent. You know how they say 2 codependents could be in a room of 100, they'll find each other like that. That's not necessarily the case with narcissists, by the way. Like if you have been with a narcissist and you really feel racked, okay, it's not, you can rebuild your relationship and your trust with yourself. You're very unlikely to fall into that again if you have that relationship.
Yeah, if you have your center.
Find your center. Don't go looking outside to fix it. That's what causes problem in the first place. That's what caused the problem for them. They're actually looking to control the outside because they don't know how to direct their inside. So
the part that I resonate the most that you said is that oftentimes people will, and in abusive relationships, we call it meeting the representative, which you meet the charismatic part of them first. And then of course they show all the other things that are behind that. But when the energy starts to shift, or when it becomes something that you start to not feel so good about, because there's always that point, we often, women, I'm speaking for women and men too, I'm sure, but we often stay because of loyalty, because there's love there, because we feel as though we're obligated. And one of the most important things somebody ever told me was that once there's new information, you're allowed to make a different decision. And he gave me this metaphor because I was going to travel to Europe. And he said, let's just say that you meet, Jonathan at a bar in Prague, and you agree to go home with Jonathan that night. And you're like, great. And then you go to a bar and all of a sudden Jonathan's doing some drugs in the back room. And you're like, whoa, I didn't sign up for this. And so then you get to say, now there's new information. I can change my agreement about going home with Jonathan. And for some reason, that was incredibly pivotal for me to hear, because in my family dynamic, which a lot of us have, I think we have this sense of loyalty to people that we've had a prior commitment to, or some sort of engagement, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. And so I always tell people, when faced with new information, you get to make a different choice. And no matter how strong your feelings are for that person, if all of a sudden you start to feel, whoa, this person's no longer okay for me, then you can just leave saying nothing. Just exit and disconnect.
It's brilliant if you could do that. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I find with a lot of people I work with is I made up this term. I've heard it in another context. They have persistence of vision. They saw it. It felt so good. And even now that there's contradictory information,
yes, they think they can get it back.
They're still focused on that, and they want that again. But that train is past now. Now it's a whole different thing, and they're still holding on to. That's what I find. Persistence of vision is, with people I'm working with, is their biggest issue. And so I don't say that you can leave. I say you've got to take responsibility for your child. I try to, with abuse victims, I noticed that they would have no sense of themselves and stopping something. But if I could tell them, if you had a daughter or you love more than anything, and she kept getting, and I could give examples. She kept coming back bloody or cut, etc. You wouldn't say, oh, go back and play with Michael, because no one's going to want to play with him because he's abusive. And you're the only one. So you've got to go back, honey. And if your little girl's like, I don't want to go back. Well, you have to, honey, because no one would want to play with you. You would never do that. But that's exactly what abuse victims do. That they've said to me, oh, but if I don't love him, no one will.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. Okay. Like,
or I can't leave him behind. It's actually a childhood wound. They feel as though they can't leave that person behind because that person's suffering, and somehow they feel guilt for leaving them.
Well, what a situation with a person we're calling a narcissist, which I really call a person who's completely empty. The problem with that is they take all your energy or life force, right? Your juice, whatever you want to call it, that could be used on you. So you feel as small as they do. That's the problem. And so because so much of your attention has gone to them, they feel very big and you feel very small. And therefore, the only thing to do is, well, if you have people who love you, reach out, get support. And a lot of us have, right? Reach out to us, reach out to somewhere and get help to turn around, to turn back inward. And now you've got to refeed that child. You've got to refeed that part of yourself, because it's the child part of ourselves that's in love, isn't it? That's magic that comes from that. So yeah, beautifully said, Z. So yeah, I mean, realize what happened then is not going to happen again ever the same way, you know? And and abusers are great at topping their last big trick, you know, doing something even more spectacular. And again, if it was your child or someone you love, you wouldn't care. If they've already hurt or abused your child, you're not going to sign up for it. So we'll call this video.
Friends will know. If you have friends and you're telling them about the back and forth dynamic in your relationship, usually listen to your friends. If they're like, you're happy right now and telling me what a great, awesome time you had on this date, but for the last 2 weeks, you were crying and super upset and really confused, and like, listen to that.
Yeah, as long as you haven't started hiding from them, you know, like where you tell them up, you're like, okay, I told you too much. Now you're telling me to break up and I'm not ready to do it.
And also, if you're not telling your friends the truth, that's another red flag.
If you can't tell them the truth, and let's face it, most people who date narcissists know that they have to start hiding stuff and can't give a whole picture, because you know that some part. And the reason why you're there, by the way, is because at this point you feel small. And so the only way to get your own bigness back, your mass, your strength, attention is, in physics, attention here is mass and having mass and occupying space. The only way you're going to get that back is to bring it to you instead of intention to someone else outside of you. You got to bring it back to attention. Anyway,
I mean, I feel like this could all be summed up with fill yourself up first all the time. Like, you are the most important, cameras in, and fill yourself up all the time. Nourish yourself.
You know, the word we use for that, by the way, Z, is we say attention instead of intention. Most people don't give themselves attention. Even if they sit alone, they're going off to intention. But if it only takes a short while to fill yourself up if you stay with you.
Yeah. Cool.